This is James Blackman Jr., former Indiana Hoosier. Make sure you're keeping up with the Hoosiers on Indiana Sports Beat.
Today's guest is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville with hand-tossed pizzas, bold burgers, and ice-cold beer. Pizza, burgers, beer. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, of course, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Friday. I hope you've had a great week. October 25th. I can't believe we're almost through October. Joined now by Tom Brew from Sports Illustrated Indiana. Tom, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Jim. Happy third Friday to you now. It's the last Friday in October. It's hard to believe, isn't it?
I cannot believe we're almost through October, and we're more than halfway through this football season. And not only that, but we're talking about Indiana football. It is a subject of matter. Indiana stands at 5-2, and they go on the road this week to Nebraska, looking at bowl eligibility and a very, very real possibility, not only of achieving that, but achieving it at a very iconic place.
Well, it's going to be tremendous. I've watched a lot of football on TV from Lincoln, but I've never been there myself. I'm really looking forward to the road trip out there this weekend. It could be a special week for the Hoosiers. I mean, it's one thing to get to 6 wins and be bowl eligible, and that's all good and well. But that was never the goal of this team. The first goal that they created this year was to win their bowl game. So they took getting to 6 wins as a given, and so to be able to go to Lincoln and do that would be a huge thing. And this Nebraska team, quite frankly, they got all sorts of problems, and times have changed enough, and written about it a lot this week that here's Indiana. They can go into Lincoln and be favored and have a very good chance to win. And it's Saturday, 3:30 Eastern time. Can't get there soon enough for me.
Well, it's a similar situation to last week. Indiana goes on the road to play a Maryland team who they were on paper, they were a better team than, and everyone expected Indiana to win, although Maryland put up a fight. They were not going to just give that up that easily, and it's going to be the same with Nebraska. Nebraska is a team that's kind of a wounded animal, and Indiana is kind of on the uprise, but Nebraska is not going to just roll over and die. It's going to be a dogfight in a typical Big Ten battle.
No question. I'm sure it's going to come down to who makes the most plays late in the fourth quarter. But what I like about Indiana in this game is that is what they do well is what Nebraska is not doing well right now. And I think Indiana has a chance to take advantage of a lot of things, and and they can go out there. And to me, and I've talked about this and written about it a lot this week. I think the fact that Indiana had a road game last week at Maryland and played well and found a way to win will help them immensely as a carryover going to Nebraska this weekend, because now they know they can do it. And I think that's a huge thing. Well, with Indiana football, it's all about the psyche, and it's all about changing that culture and that mindset that Tom Allen has preached since he got here. The one things they could never do is win close games. And the one thing they can never do is win close games on the road. And they did that last week. So I think if what they learned from last week, and also, most importantly, how good it felt, to win a game on the road, they'll be able to take that with them to Lincoln. And when things get tight late, I don't think they'll panic, and I think they'll find a way to come through and make it, find a way to win a game and come back home to Bloomington 6-2.
And this is a big game for a lot of reasons. We just talked about becoming bowl eligible, obviously one of those. But winning a Big Ten road game, this will be back-to-back Big Ten road wins if they can get that done. And then winning it at a place like Nebraska. Nebraska is a place that, for any of us that have any age on us at all, we grew up watching Nebraska play Oklahoma and Texas and all those teams on TV, on that CBS Game of the Week with Brent Musburger and all that. We grew up watching that, and while Nebraska is not that team of old right now, it's still an iconic place, and it would be an incredible win for Tom Allen and this football program.
Sure. I mean, Nebraska is one of only 7 teams in the country to ever win 900 games or more. I mean, they are among the elite, and in my lifetime, since 1970, they've won 5 national championships, and I've had the pleasure of being at 2 games, where they didn't, where they had bowl games where they could have won. I mean, they have, we talk a lot about what Alabama's done, in these, in this last decade of dominance. Nebraska's been the same way. I mean, they've won 5 national championships and they played for 4 others. They're just that dominant of a program. And here all of a sudden now, when we fast forward and we turn the clock to October 26, 2019, here's little old Indiana, the team with the most Division I losses in the history of college football, going into Lincoln, with a chance to win, with the expectation of winning, and that's how times have changed. And that's just, it's a wonderful thing if you root for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, and I've talked about the point spread on this game all week, and not from a betting standpoint, but just from an aspect of looking of what the opinions of this game must be, because the point spread has changed hands 2 different times, 2 different ways. It opened up Indiana as a favorite. It switched over to Nebraska as the favorite. It went back to Indiana. And then currently, right now, Nebraska is a 2.5-point favorite. I've never seen a point spread go back and forth like that for any game ever. And that just shows you how balanced I think this game is going to be. But to be having that conversation about Indiana going to Nebraska, that's a feather in the hat for the Indiana football program.
Sure, and I've seen it 1,000 times, so it does happen. And it's like, I think what's weird about this game is that with Indiana, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Michael Penix got banged up last week. Peyton Ramsey came in, finished the game. Indiana's been very quiet about Michael Penix's health. So we don't know. But it's the same thing with Nebraska. I mean, Adrian Martinez got hurt 2 weeks ago in their game with Minnesota. Didn't play. They're a mess. And he's been. There's real questions about whether or not he's available to play for them, and that's just. It's just so there's a lot of unknowns. So I think when the point spreads are irrelevant from that standpoint, because it all depends if you're the gambler, like what day you're making that bet is all that ever matters. But I think still people have no idea. It's like I think. If we knew Michael Penix was playing and we knew Adrian Martinez was playing for Nebraska, the line would have been set on Monday and it would have never moved. It's like, but now nobody knows. Like one day, well, maybe he's going to play. One day, maybe this guy's not. It's just bouncing back and forth that way. And it's like, it's just, it's not going to matter. It's gonna come down to whoever's playing in the fourth quarter anyway, and it's all going to get, determined by one play or another. And there's no expert in the world. No matter how much money they have in their wallet, you can make a bet and know for sure what's going to happen.
One thing that has impressed me about this Indiana team this year is we were both up at East Lansing and watched them play Michigan State tooth and nail down to the end on the road in front of 70,000. We saw them go on the road last week and get a Big Ten road win at Maryland. They play on the road with little fear, especially for a team that is immature as this one is. 80 of the 113 players are underclassmen. That hasn't seemed to matter. And when I've talked to them, and when you've talked to them, it doesn't. The road thing, they seem to embrace that.
Exactly. I mean, I think they like the idea of going and silencing crowds. I think it's a huge thing for them. And I think a lot of it is what I think. When we look, especially going back to Michigan State, and I think the great analogy can be made between that game and this game, because obviously going into Michigan State, we had no idea whether Michael Penix was going to play or not. But I think the players knew that he was. And so when they got up there, they had a whole lot of confidence that they could beat that Michigan State team. And Michael played great that game. I mean, Indiana's offense scored 31 points. They were right there, and the offense certainly played well enough to win that game. And they had all sorts of confidence. And the thing that's amazing about this Indiana team to me is these young kids, especially, they grew up in programs playing high school football where they won all the time anyway. So now they're here. They don't know any different. These young kids, they fully expect to win a game when they go out there to play, and that's a wonderful attitude to have. And obviously, do they still make mistakes? Sure. But I think they are very, very confident group, and I think when they go to Lincoln tomorrow, they fully expect to win, and that's the biggest difference in Indiana football right now to me is that they go places expecting to win.
Absolutely, and the fact that they've done this with a two-quarterback system that is not at all intended to be a two-quarterback system is amazing to me. And we've seen this throughout the country this year. So many teams have had a quarterback go down. Indiana is so lucky to have a Peyton Ramsey who has not only played extensively, but he's been a starter. He's a leader for this team, and he's maintained that leadership on and off the starting field. Whether it's on the sideline or wherever, he's been a consummate teammate for this program.
Absolutely, and it's a great credit to him. He talked about it a little bit Saturday night after the game, and then talked about it at greater length on Monday. Is that when it's been really hard for him to lose his starting job, and he's had to deal with it. But the best line he says is, "I wasn't going to walk away from my guys." It's like those players in that locker room, they mean so much to him, and I think he knew, though he lost his starting job, that there was going to be a time when this team needed him, and they've needed him a lot, and obviously the Ohio State game when he had to start, he freely admits he did not play well, and I think Indiana sort of underestimated how awesome Ohio State was, and they got blown out. But other than that, Peyton Ramsey has played very, very well when he's been in there. He had a great game against Connecticut, completed, 88% of his passes or whatever that crazy number was. And I thought he really played well at Maryland last week too. He was very poised, and mostly, the best compliment anyone can give him is he knew the playbook like the back of his hand. I mean, every check that he needed to make, he did. Every audible he needed to make, he did. Every read option, he made the right decisions. And he made some throws. I still say, the touchdown drive right before halftime, after Maryland had taken the lead, Indiana came back down and scored with 24 seconds to go in the second quarter. I think that's a season-defining drive by Peyton Ramsey because, if Indiana goes in the locker room behind, maybe that whole negative attitude, reemerges. But instead, they went down and scored, and Nick Westbrook made an incredible catch, and they had that lead, and they never gave it up, and that was a huge difference. So, Peyton Ramsey is an above-average college quarterback, and he played well. And Indiana, if he has to answer the call on Saturday, he needs to play well again. And I think all of his teammates have full faith and confidence in him to do that.
Absolutely. So as we head down, it's going to be game time tomorrow afternoon. Indiana at 3:30, taking on the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I see Indiana winning this game, and of course we had this discussion off air. I don't think it's going to come down to the quarterback because both teams are down one. But I think Indiana has the advantage because they got Peyton Ramsey, who's been a former starter. But I think it's going to come down to Indiana's defense. If they can get the job done in stopping Nebraska, which they have not had a great offensive output this year, I think Indiana clearly is going to win this game.
Well, I would like to think so, too. I mean, Indiana's defense continues to improve, but, they're playing so many young guys that every once in a while they just get in situations where they see something new that they haven't seen before, and they make a mistake, and, like Maryland, hit them with a few big, 3 plays of 40 yards or longer, a 61-yarder and a 50-yarder and a 40-yarder. It was like a third of their offense. The rest of the night they held them up. They held up pretty well. And it's, I think it's a group that keeps getting better every week. And it's like the swagger that these young guys have. It's like, if someone's making a mistake, if a junior or senior is making a mistake, then put the freshman in, and the freshman will make plays, and that's what's happening. And and I think they have dialed up the pressure, which has helped a lot. They did a lot of that against Maryland. They were all over, Tyrell Pegram, Maryland's quarterback, and really forced him into a lot of bad throws and forced him just to take off, and they kept him in check. And I think, playing two sort of similar offenses in back-to-back weeks really makes it makes it easier to prepare for one, but that confidence level of Indiana's defense, I think, is at a high mark right now, and I think they know that they can go to Nebraska and keep this team in check.
Yeah, I think I got these numbers off of something you put out, but Nebraska's defense is 10th in the Big Ten. They're 13th in the rushing defense. They give up 5.9 yards an attempt. Their edge defensive capabilities are not that great. I think this is going to be a big week. I know you said you think 150 yards for Stevie Scott.
That's my guess, and yes, you got those numbers from a story I wrote earlier, this week, on SI.com, and that's exactly right. I mean, other than Rutgers, Nebraska's defense right now is the worst defense in the Big Ten. And it's like, and here comes this Indiana offense that's, basically, second or third or fourth in just about every offensive category in the Big Ten. I mean, this is an offense that's been, rolling up 500-plus yards every single week lately, and been running it well, throwing it well, doing it, basically staying turnover-free for the most part, and when they have, just about every time they've made a turnover, the defense has held up, where they didn't, points off turnovers have been very, very low for this team all year, which is good. So, I mean, I think all of that's there. I do think Stevie Scott's going to have a big, huge game, and and I think their ability to attack like that will definitely make a difference.
The one feeling I'm getting, I had a reporter segment yesterday. Sean Callahan was on from Husker Online. I could tell we know this is a big game for Indiana for a lot of obvious reasons. This is a huge game for Nebraska. They can't afford to lose this game to a program that does not have the cachet as far as being a football prodigy. They're not this big time program, but Indiana is a team that is probably going to be the favorite to actually win this game. But this was going to be a huge hit to Nebraska's psyche.
Sure, because when they hired Scott Frost last year, they hired him to fix a mess. And they got off to a horrible start, but they played relatively well the last half of the season, and they came into this year thinking year two would be a year they would get better. They've had a ton of injuries, which every program goes through, but still they've had a bunch, but they're also just not there yet. I think a lot of people in Nebraska have learned that the talent level at their school is just nowhere near where it's been, and Scott Frost is a very good coach and has a great reputation. And I think he'll probably have that Nebraska program looking pretty good a year or two down the road. But right now, they're just not there. And, and they are 4-3 right now. When you look at their schedule, they don't have, 2 or 3 guaranteed wins left on their schedule. It's like, the idea of Nebraska not going to a bowl game, a second and third year in a row, that's just not something they go through. Nebraska fired Bo Pelini because he only won 9 games, and it's like, and here they are, trying to get to 6, it's just not Nebraska football, and it's, so yes, they consider this an absolute, in Lincoln, this is an absolute must win for them. They cannot afford to lose to Indiana, but that's the Big Ten right now. It's just, there's a lot of teams in the middle of the pack. And there's not much that separates them. And there's, quite frankly, there's not much that separates Indiana and Nebraska either, which is amazing. But, I mean, I think even, we've talked about, I think Indiana has that edge.
Absolutely. Tom Brew from Sports Illustrated Indiana, thank you, sir. I look forward to seeing you out in Lincoln, Nebraska as the Hoosiers take on the Huskers this weekend.
I'm excited about it, Jim. Really looking forward to my first trip to Lincoln. It's going to be great.
Me as well. Appreciate everybody joining us on the program today. Great week. We'll hopefully finish up with a big win for Indiana this Saturday. We'll get back to you on Monday and let you know how that turned out. But for Jake, this is Jim Coyle. Until the next time, I will see you on the radio.